easy. So you have access to Notion already then, right?
Yes.
On Notion as a processor, if you'll be assigned as one of our processor VAs, you'll have access to our processor board, or you should have possibly the disclosure board and training materials. Um, so this and this team conversation. So this team conversation is this page where I'm at right now. And it shows all our files that we're currently working on at the stage that they're at. So this initial review is when the file comes in, when we get the application sent by the LO, or if they complete it through ERP, we review it. We'll have one of the VAs rename documents, scrub the file, create the calyx point, and then once it's ready to go, if it's a purchase, if we have escrow documents, we have a contract, we can submit it. That's when we're at our submission page. Once it's been submitted and we have the approval with conditions, it turns over to our PTD. So these are the files that we're working on conditions. Once we work on all the conditions and have our clear to close or our CTC, it gets moved to our PCF. Right here, it's prior to funding. This one is we work on certain conditions before we can fund. These bars are signing their loan docs already. Once they sign the loan docs, we receive them back and the file gets funded. It gets, depending on what company or lender we're working with, there's a post-closing condition. Sometimes it requires additional conditions. And then once everything is cleared, it's closed, okay?
Yeah.
It's a quick overview of our steps, but this is where we communicate within each file. Eventually, we're gonna communicate only through ERP. But in the meantime, this is where we communicate between the processors. So our processor board here, it has our first day onboarding information, training material, all the things that we need to know for processing. We have additional training materials here for different types of, for example, income calculation, how to calculate income, how to label our docs, our calyx point, how to create calyx points, as of different information regarding our FHAs and VAs on how to submit and review these files. On here, it also has a quick flow charts between our purchase and our refinance. So the purchase, it kind of gives you step by step before we open escrow, after escrow's been opened, the submission, prior to docs, doc CD, loan docs, funding, and after funding. So it's just a quick overview. Like I said, depending on what step, it has a brief explanation of everything. We also have additional resources here on how to do certain things like our mortgagee costs. When we have to reach out to the insurance, we have to update our mortgagee. How to order appraisals or rent verifications. We have all that here as well.
Okay.
Our disclosure desk, that's not necessarily a processor, it's our disclosure team, but it is something where we would need to know on how to do. So these training materials are very important that you watch over them. So that way, if you get assigned as a disclosure team, you know the steps. So within the file that I explained the different steps, there's different steps within those steps on our TRID documents. So at loan submission, we issue our initial disclosures. Once the file's been, and the initial disclosures have been submitted and signed, if we can, the loan officer can lock the loan. At that stage, we get our locked LE, our locked loan estimate or revised loan estimate. After a day after that, we can, if we have certain documents, for example, our insurance, our appraisal, and certain, I think it's a vesting, certain items, once we have those, we can issue our CD, our initial CD, which is our initial closing disclosure.
Okay.
After that, once that's been signed, there's a 3-day rescission period that we need to wait before we can actually issue loan docs. So if it gets signed today, let's say initial CD goes out today, and they sign today, we have 1, 2, 3 on this 12th day, is when we can issue the loan documents for this file. That being said, as long as all conditions and this loan is clear to close. If it's the 12th and we still haven't been clear to close, then we can't issue loan docs. So within our steps of the file that I had mentioned previously, there's these disclosure or TRID documents that we need to follow as well. I'm not sure if you have access to this GTL MLO board, but this one here has a quick overview of, let me see, I think it's this one. No, let me see, I had there was a quick chart that kind of explained everything, but I don't know where I found it last time. Oh, might be this one actually. There we go. So this one here, it explains regarding the TRID. So our initial disclosures get sent, and then the locked delete gets sent, and then our initial CD gets sent, and then once the loan is clear to close, we can issue the loan docs with the final CD. So there you go. I'm not sure if you have access to this MLO board, but
yes, I
you
have.
do? Okay. So this one here is for the loan officer, essentially for them to have their checklist on their first day and different resources, and that can help them throughout this, throughout their work. So there's this lender investor page. It has all the companies that we work with, their different programs, the type of channel, and the person they can contact if they have questions. So if I think they're going to have a scenario team member where the loan officer, if they have a certain scenario, one of our VAs can reach out with the specific questions that the loan officer has to our AEs. But essentially, the loan officer does have an access to this. They can reach out to them directly, depending on We also have different channels. So we have a broker channel, our non-delegated correspondent, retail, or mini correspondent. So these different channels depends on how it's different for how the loan officer can charge on the file. So if they're a broker, they don't get rebates. They can only charge up front. For correspondents or a mini core, they can charge up front and they can also get some type of rebate. So it gives them an idea of how the file will be submitted and how they would get paid pretty much.
Okay.
Up here, you can go via loan program. So if you're specifically looking for a DSCR program, these are all the companies that have DSCR loans. They can go to these if they have a question, depending on whatever question they might have for a DSCR program. They can reach out to these companies. The contact is there as well with their specific questions instead of going down the list here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so not going to go through all of these, but we do have different programs. They are, I guess we can call them as our full docs, which are going to be our FHA, conventional VA, USDA loans, or we have our non-QM loans, which would be our bank statements, DSCRs, our VOEs, P&Ls, 1099. All those are what non-QM which would be a non-qualified mortgage loan. Let me see what else. The loan officer here as well has this MMI instruction. I'm not sure if you've been trained in here as well. I think Vicky was doing some training, but you can go through these different steps on how to log into our MMI, and they can reach out to different agents for them to do what they call cold calling, to reach out to agents and offer our services. What else is on here that I think would be good for you too? I think that's pretty much it. Oh, our training materials here. Has all the training materials all in one. So if instead of going through the processor board and only going through whatever is on the processor, you can look through all the different trainings on here. Throughout all the different tabs that I just showed you, there's different training materials. You can find them all here if it's easier for you to find it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Do you have any questions?
Yes. I just wanted to know how many tools we have like for processing the loan or submitting a loan like that.
So right now, we are working on training material on how actually submitting the loan to different lenders. But at the moment, it's just Gia or I that are submitting. Once we have those training materials, eventually we'll have whoever is assigned as a processor help us with the submissions. But we're currently working on that. But there are a few here on how to submit where you can review.
And also, Brenda, I'm just also curious. If is it? I just wanted to know if it's the same thing or different. Like, is it right that the TBD scenario and the UW or the underwriting is different to each other?
They are. So a TBD would be for a property that, or not a property, a loan that the bar still doesn't have a property. They can get a TBD approval sometimes. And then once they find that property, they will just provide those updated documents to update the approval.
Okay.
Once it's in underwriting, so when the file gets submitted and we send out those initial disclosures, once that's been signed and we have all the documents required to submit the loan, then the file gets sent to underwriting. That underwriter will review it and provide us with a updated conditional approval. So that conditional approval is what we would be working on our conditions in our PTD stage. So we would be working on getting those conditions for the file to be.
Oh, okay. So if for the underwriting, the full process or the final process, the chosen property, is it right?
It'd be like the middle stage. Early
Oh,
on stage, it wouldn't be the final. Once it's
okay.
the final stage would be more like once we have our clear to close or our CTC and we can issue loan docs and like we're working on our funding conditions, that would be more of our final stage. Underwriting would be the early on stages after we submit the file and while we work on the conditions.
All right, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so you mentioned you had training through ERP, so I kind of just want to go a quick overview here as well. So this eventually will be our main point of contact, and we're gonna eventually move away from Notion. So this pipeline has all our active files that we're currently working on. Whether once it's been submitted, if we're waiting on our approval, we're working on conditions. Before the file actually gets funded, that's where you'll find it in the pipeline. If you click on it, it has a quick overview of the loan information with certain dates. For example, if we were to, like this one, it was already locked. It has a lock expiration date. If an appraisal was ordered, it have the information here. But this bottom here, this comment section, if you click on show hide comment, you can type in the comment, hit submit, and then it'll show up here. But this comment section is going to be what our main communication will be eventually. So it's every time you work on a file, if you're working as a processor, if you're ordering something or you're reaching out to the LO to get additional documents, whatever it is, I highly recommend that you put a comment so that way we know at what stage we're on with the file. This priority section has different section tabs. If you're assigned on the file and you need to work on something and it's very urgent that we get it, they'll put it in urgent. we'll put when it's due, and then you'll get a notification reminding you, hey, work on this, hey, work on this, because it's urgent. Okay.
Yes.
Our loan app pending review. So this borrower application, these are the applications the borrowers do. We can just follow up on here. This is their application. If an ideal application will have all their documents here that are required, that we will just hit download, and we will rename it and scrub the file. This MLO/broker submission, this is the submission for the loan officer. They will complete as much as they can on the application, especially this fee worksheet. This fee sheet is going to have whatever fees they are going to collect. So remember how I mentioned how different, depending on the broker channels, the different channels that we have, is how they can get paid. So for example, if it's a broker file and they're not going to get a rebate, they have to have, if they want to get something out of this file, they have to charge this origination. In this case, they do have it at 0. So if you were doing the submission, we would recommend that you follow up with the loan officer to check, like, hey, are you not charging anything? Please confirm before you actually submit it. Or if you're working as the disclosure team, because it's very important that the fees get updated correctly at submission, because once those initial disclosures are out and the borrower has signed, they can't add new fees. So if, let's say, they submitted these fees the way they are, but the borrower wanted to charge 1%, well, after it's the disclosure, they can't add that 1%. We would have to resubmit the file elsewhere. So it's very important that we're encouraging the loan officers to complete this, because it's something that's new and not everybody is comfortable with it, but we do need to make sure that everybody has submitted. So for them to submit it, they'll just go to this one right here, and it's a application, a submission. They answer all the questions. Again, have them answer as much as possible. If it's a purchase, if they have the contract, put the address here. Different information, loan information here. Again, if it's a purchase, we need escrow company. Usually they'll forward us the information, but it's best that they start inputting that information here. So if you start typing in, it has already a few different ones, but if there are none of these, you just add new, and then you can put in all the new escrow information.
Okay. Yeah.
That's about it. After we get the loan application, once we download the application and download the XML and import it, once we do our initial review, then it gets moved to a prospect applicant. So this applicant is because we've already reviewed it. We've already sent out an initial structure to the loan officer, but it's not necessarily ready where we're moved onto our pipeline where it's been submitted yet.
Okay.
Any questions?